Hi, it's Mitch from PickDawgz.com, and it is Friday, June the 7th, 2024, here with today's Major League Baseball first 5 inning picks. There are no other games today, just Major League Baseball, so 14 games today, so that's 14 first 5 inning picks on this video. Of course, we also go over today in sports history, and today in sports history, 1966, the New York Mets decided in the Major League Baseball draft it was a good idea to pass on Reggie Jackson. They took Steve Chilcott. Oh man, the rest is history. Mr. October went on, played for the A's, won a bunch of World Series there, won World Series with the Yankees as well. And the Mets, well, they've won a few. They've won a World Series, or 2 World Series, but not much else. But of course, we're gonna win a lot today as we smash the books in Major League Baseball action. Been picking up some heat with our picks once again, so let's see if we can keep it rolling today. For our first game, we head to Pittsburgh, where the Pirates are taking on the Minnesota Twins. The Pirates, of course, finished off their series with the Dodgers, got off to a rough start in that game, came back, but then the bullpen kind of let them down. Meanwhile, the Twins, boy, they couldn't get out of the Bronx fast enough, getting beaten up by the Yankees over the last few days. Joe Ryan takes the bump here for the Twins. He's got a 2.20 ERA over his last 5 starts, while Mitch Keller for the Pirates, just a 1 ERA over his last 5 starts. He has really turned up the volume, giving up just 2 runs in 1 of his last 5 starts and 1 in 3 of those starts and 0 in the rest. He has been on fire. When we look at the way these guys have hit right-handed pitching, the Twins 218 versus righties on the season, the Pirates at 222. If we break it down to the last 10 games, 224 for the Twins and 227 for the Pirates. You know, we could go to the last 5. Both these teams have played respectable teams. 214 for the Twins, 241 for the Pirates. I don't see how the Pirates are a dog here. I'm taking the Pirates as my pick for the first 5. For our next game, we head to Detroit, where the Tigers are taking on the Brewers. As of the time of shooting this video, the Brewers have not named their starting pitcher, and I'll tell you what, the Brewers looking a little thin as far as their pitching staff goes. Of course, getting rid of Burns, the Woodruff injury, and a bunch of guys in there who aren't used to really pitching this high in the rotation. But the Brewers continue to lead the National League Central Division. So, boy, if they could figure out this pitching situation, they could really get the ball rolling. For the Tigers, it's Reese Olson on the bump, and this is one of those guys where I say starting pitcher record doesn't matter. Olson's been outstanding this season, but he's coming off of his worst start of the year, allowing 5 earned runs over 5 1/3 innings against the Boston Red Sox. But look at the way these teams are hitting the ball recently. Over the last 10 games, the Brewers hitting 247 while the Tigers at 228. You break it down to the last 5, neither of these teams hitting over 200. I'll tell you what, I still like the Brewers even without knowing who their pitcher is, and that's going to be my pick for the first 5. For our next game, we head to Washington, where the Nationals are taking on the Braves. I heard a lot of chatter around yesterday about how the Nationals were a pretty popular underdog pick against the Braves yesterday. And we know the Braves have had their share of struggles, but not at the top of the rotation. It's been as they move down the rotation, trying to fill in those spots. So Lopez yesterday and Sale today at the top, up against Jake Irvin on the mound for the Nationals. Of course, Irvin has pitched well in his own right, but the Nats just 1-4 in his last 5 starts. He's got a 2.0 ERA over that. Hasn't really given up a lot of runs over that span. Meanwhile, Chris Sale coming off his worst start of the season, allowing 8 earned runs in just 4 innings of work against the Oakland A's, looking to bounce back here. When we look at the Nationals hitting right-handed pitching, 242 on the season, while the Braves hitting righties at just 225. But over the last 10 games, it's the Braves at 242 and the Nationals at 202. And you go to the last 5 games, it's even worse. I'm going to take the Braves first 5. I'm going to lay a 1.5. For our next game, we head to Tampa Bay, where the Rays are taking on the Orioles. These teams just met last week in Baltimore. It was the Orioles getting wins in the first 2 games, and it was the Rays finishing off the series with a win. Cole Irvin gets the mound here for the Orioles. He was actually the starting pitcher of the game that the Orioles lost in that series. Savali on the mound for the Rays. He was a losing pitcher in a game in that series as well. Neither of these pitchers took the loss, but both of them were the starting pitchers in games which their team lost. We look at how these guys have pitched. Irvin is still maintaining these pretty solid numbers for the season. 0.8 ERA over his last 5 starts, 2.40 over his last 5 for Savali. That last start against Baltimore was one of his best starts of the season. We look at the way these teams are hitting against the Rays versus left-handed pitching in their last 10 games at 267, while the Orioles hitting 282 versus righties. The Rays just start these series so slow. I'm going to take the Orioles first 5 as my pick for this game. For our next game, we head to the Bronx, where the Yankees are taking on the Dodgers in a real classic rivalry matchup. The Dodgers go with Yamamoto on the bump, while the Yankees go with Petit. Petit, only seeing him for the 3rd time this season, but he really has pitched well. He allowed only 3 hits last time out against the San Francisco Giants through 5 innings of work. Of course, he did allow 2 runs on those 3 hits, but so be it. The Yankees still managed to get the win. On the other side, Yamamoto coming off of a 1-run allowed performance, and it had been a long time coming as he has really struggled in his recent starts, and he's been hit extremely hard. 4-1, but a 2.60 ERA over that stretch. When we look at the way these teams are hitting the baseball, the Yankees lead the majors in home runs, and we look at how they're hitting right-handed pitching, 258 versus 245 for the Dodgers, and through the last 10 games, 258 for the Yankees, 245 for the Dodgers. The Yankees are the better team here. They're home, and we're getting odds, and over the last 5 games, hitting righties at 273. I'll take the Yankees first 5 as my pick. For our next game, we head to Cincinnati, where the Reds are hosting the Cubs for Game 2 of their series. The Reds grabbing another win versus the Cubs on Thursday night after beating up the Cubs last weekend at Wrigley. It's Justin Steele on the mound for the Cubbies in this one, and he has had very little success this season, coming off a performance where he allowed 5 runs against the Reds, but the Cubs managed to win that game. It was the only game they won in that series in Chicago. Nick Lodolo on the bump here for the Reds. He pitched against the Cubs last weekend as well and won as an underdog, allowing 2 runs in 6 innings of work. The thing is that the Reds have played well against the Cubs, but traditionally, it hasn't necessarily been that way. You look at the way the Reds are hitting left-handed pitching, and they're hitting at 237, while the Cubs at 240. But you look at recently, and the Reds absolutely hitting the cover off the ball versus lefties at 337 to 244 for the Cubs. Dial it down to the last 5 games, and the Reds hitting an unbelievable 422 versus left-handed pitching. I'm going to take the Reds first 5 as my pick for this game. For our next game, we head to Miami, where the Marlins are taking on the Guardians. The Guardians, of course, just absolutely red hot, but coming off of a loss, while the Marlins, one of the worst records in baseball because of that poor start. But the Guardians go with Logan Allen in this one up against Ryan Weathers for the Marlins as a pair of lefties face off. Weathers coming off of a rough start, allowing 4 runs against the Rangers, but Logan Allen got hit for 7 earned runs in 1 2/3 innings versus Colorado last time out, and gave up 3 runs the time before that against the Dodgers. He has been hit and missed this season. Look at the way these teams are hitting left-handers. The Guardians at 246 on the season, while the Marlins at 221. But we dial into their last 10 games, the Marlins at 227 versus lefties, and the Guardians at just 206. Tone it in just a little bit more, and the Guardians hitting just 185 versus left-handed pitching. Gotta say, I know the Guardians are the better team, but this line looks funny to me anyway. I'm gonna take the Marlins first 5 as my pick for this game. For our next game, we head to Texas, where the Rangers are hosting the San Francisco Giants. These are 2 teams that continue to kind of move forward, and every time it looks like they're ready to crack through, well, they pull back a couple games. The Rangers send Michael Lorenzen to the bump in this one. It's Logan Webb on the mound for the Giants. Webb has been the Giants' #1 guy, but the Giants have not been winning games that he started, going 1-6 in his last 4 starts. He's got a 1.60 ERA and is coming off a game he allowed 4 runs against the New York Yankees. Meanwhile, for Lorenzen, coming off a shutout against the Marlins where he went 6 1/3 innings, he gave up just 1 run in his prior outing against the Twins in a game that the Rangers ended up losing, but he has pitched pretty well going back, several starts here. Usually for Lorenzen, if he can stay away from the walks, he's okay. When we look away, these teams are hitting versus righties, which both these pitchers are. 241 for the Giants and 240 for the Rangers. Look at their last 10 games. It goes to 220 for the Giants and 211 for the Rangers. I trust Lorenzen 0. I'm going to take the Giants as my first 5 pick. For our next game, we head to Chicago, where the White Sox are taking on the Red Sox. While the White Sox are one of the worst teams in baseball, they're actually pretty good first 5-inning team. Meanwhile, the Red Sox, continuing to exceed expectations, but with this pitching staff, it'll be interesting to see how far they can go. Cooper Criswell gets the ball here, coming off of a start where he allowed just 1 run on 4 hits through 5 innings against the Detroit Tigers. 2.60 ERA through his last 5 starts. Garrett Crochet, one of the top pitchers in the major leagues when it comes to strikeouts per 9 innings, coming off an 8 strikeout performance against the Milwaukee Brewers. He struck out 11 against the Orioles in the game prior than that. He had 11 versus the Guardians before that. He is absolutely on fire. The Red Sox are a much better team on the road than they are at home. They're hitting, though, 247 versus lefties, while the White Sox hitting just 214 versus righties. The Red Sox, over the last 10, it's 250 versus 190 for the White Sox. I don't care. I'm going to ride Crochet and take the White Sox as first 5. For our next game, we head to Kansas City, where the Royals are taking on the Mariners. It's Daniel Lynch, the 4th, on the mound for the Royals, and Bryce Miller on the mound for the Mariners. We haven't seen much of Lynch this season. What we've seen of him so far, just 2 trips to the mound, allowing no runs against the Rangers, and then allowing 3 runs last time out against the Minnesota Twins. For Bryce Miller, just another guy in the Seattle rotation. He had a little bump in the road, but then his last 2 starts have been extremely strong once again, going 6 innings, allowing 2 runs against the Astros and then no runs against the Los Angeles Angels. Look at how these teams are hitting the baseball, and the Royals significantly better versus righties, 244, the Mariners versus lefties at 217, and you look at the last 10 games, the Mariners at 220 versus the Royals at 256. I think the difference maker here, though, is the pitching, and I think Miller can get it done against the Royals, at least through the 5. I'm going to take the Mariners in the first 5 as my pick for this game. For our next game, we go to St. Louis, where the Cardinals are taking on the Rockies. Hopefully you cashed with us yesterday on that big payer on the Rockies. I also had the Rockies full game as a premium pick as well. So hopefully you got a chance to cash on that as well. Lance Lynn on the bump today for the Cardinals, up against Austin Gomber for the Rockies. And Gomber is having his best season of his career. He has been on fire, but coming off an outing where he allowed 3 runs against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Meanwhile, when we look at Lance Lynn, coming off an outing where he allowed 4 runs against the Phillies, and then 3 runs prior to that against the Cincinnati Reds. Lynn looks to be regressing a little bit over the last 5 games. We look at how these teams are hitting the baseball. The Rockies versus right-handed pitching at 239, and the Cardinals just 203 versus lefties. But over the last 10 games, the Cardinals at 224 versus lefties, and the Rockies at 212. If we dial it in a little closer, the Cardinals just 154 versus lefties over their last 5. I gotta say, all the value on the Rockies once again, and we're gonna take them here first 5. For our next game, we head to Anaheim, where the Angels are taking on the Astros. Griffin Canning on the bump for the Angels, while Framber Valdez is on the mound for the Astros. A couple of starts back, Framber had a disaster where he allowed 10 hits and 8 runs through 5 innings, but he's bounced back, allowing 3 runs the next time out, and then just 1 run last time out against the Minnesota Twins. Griffin Canning had a horrible start to the season, but as of late, he has been much better. Last time allowing just 1 run and then 3 runs in his prior start, but that was against the Yankees in the game that the Angels won. He's got a 1.40 through his last 5. When we look at how these teams are hitting, the Angels versus lefties hitting them at 275 for the season, while the Astros at 257 versus right-handed pitching. And we dial it in even closer, the Angels 303 over their last 10 games versus left-handed pitching, while the Astros hitting just 230. I'm not sure who wins this game outright, but I like the Angels in the first 5, and that's going to be my pick for this game. For our next game, we head to San Diego where the Padres are taking on the Diamondbacks. It's Brandon Pfaadt on the mound for the D-backs, and it's Michael King on the mound for the Padres. You know, yesterday we took the Diamondbacks in that game. It was just a pure fate of Vasquez, and we really got paid off early in that one as he got hit early and often. The Padres now on an absolute skid, but I think in this one, Michael King, who's really been a lot of smoke and mirrors this season, has pitched pretty well his last two starts, allowing just one run in each of those through 5 and 7 innings. Meanwhile, when we look at the Diamondbacks, Pfaadt has been pretty roughed up in his last couple of starts, but playing against some heavy hitters in the Mets and the Rangers. I think, as we move on to the hitting here, the Diamondbacks versus right-handed pitching just 225 on the season, while the Padres at 271. We look at the last 10 games and the Padres are hitting 310 versus righties and the Diamondbacks at just 238. The Padres have been terrible, but they shake it off here. I'm going to take the Padres first 5 as my pick for this game. For the last game on today's card, we head to Oakland where the A's are hosting the Blue Jays. Of course, the Blue Jays having little bit of a rough season compared to where they want to be, while the A's, well, this is a team purely in transition. The A's sent Hogan Harris to the mound, and for the Blue Jays, it's Chris Bassett, who's been outstanding in his recent starts, allowing 3 runs last time against Pittsburgh, but 2 shutouts prior to that. Meanwhile, Hogan Harris for the A's, we've seen him just once this season, allowing just 1 run and 4 hits, 1 earned run, but 3 runs total crossing the plate in 5 2/3 inning of work. The A's have been very inconsistent this season. It's not like they haven't been trying. They're hitting right-handed pitching at 219, while the Jays hitting lefties at 229. We look at more recent body of work. The A's versus righties at just 176 and the Blue Jays at just 209 versus left-handed pitching. Basically, neither of these teams are hitting the baseball. Let's roll with the under in the first 5 of the A's Blue Jays as our pick for this game. That wraps up today's first 5 innings picks. We don't have any NBA until Sunday. Well, we'll do the first half of that game once again after winning the first half yesterday with our pick on the Boston Celtics. But of course, we'll be back with 15 Major League Baseball games tomorrow. If you're looking for the games that I'm betting today, my best bets, you can find those over at our website, PickDawgz.com, under the Premium Picks tab. Documented premium picks from the world's best handicappers. Check it out and use the discount code PICK. You can get 15% off. We also have gear like this Nike dry fit that I'm wearing, this hat that I'm wearing, and plenty of other stuff over at PickDawgz as well underneath the merch tab. I also put links in the description for the premium and for the merch conveniently in the description of this video. Just click on it to check it all out. Thanks everyone for joining me. This is Mitch. I'll see you tomorrow with more first 5 innings picks. Let's crush the books tonight.